In the Hunger Games book, it was stated that the capital ruled over 12 districts, and that there was a District 13 that was destroyed during the Dark Days. However, the middle of Catching Fire suggested that District 13 might still be active, and the ending of that novel more or less confirmed it. This is important as in Mockingjay, District 13 is used as the base for launching military operations and propaganda, operations that proved crucial in liberating the districts from the capital prior to overthrowing the capital itself. So this leads to an important question. What if District 13 really was destroyed? What then? Will the capital ever be overthrown, or would it continue to reign forever?
I am today, and am tomorrow, and am forever.
I am the Media Dunce, and while I continue to work on my Clone Wars Infinity War mashup, I figured that while that mashup is in development, I would attempt to tackle the answer to this question. It was established that District 13 was able to convince the capital to leave it alone because both the capital and 13 had nuclear weapons, the use of which could have utterly destroyed Panem. The agreement, therefore, was that 13 would withdraw from the fight and pretend to have been devastated, while the capital would leave it alone and grant 13 its secret independence. In order for District 13 to be destroyed, 13 would either have to have no nuclear weapons, which is a tough sell given that 13's primary industry is nuclear energy. Is it far-fetched to believe that the capital can't do the same with District 13? If the capital had tight controls over 13's nuclear program, then either 13 can't develop nuclear weapons, or perhaps 13 manages to create some without the capital finding out. As long as the capital believes 13 lacks nuclear weapons, then 13 can be destroyed. This leads to two scenarios. One, the rebels manage to sneak some resources outside of Panem altogether before the capital triumphs. 2, the rebels fail to establish a stronghold away from Panem. As a result, the districts really are alone under capital occupation. Let's quickly go over scenario 1. I consider it plausible because the rebels would attempt to mount assaults on the capital mountains, i.e. the Rocky Mountains, before the capital hovercraft would bomb them. The fact that the rebels were able to mount these assaults at all tells me that there was a window during which the rebels could have snuck supplies away from Panem altogether without the capital intercepting them. This could have been done as a contingency in case the capital gained the upper hand during the Dark Days and was able to reassert control over Panem. Had this happened, and the rebels were able to grow outside of Panem, then the story might have played out the same way, only instead of the rebel stronghold being District 13, it would have been far away from the capital. The scenario where no such stronghold was established is a far more interesting one, as the 12 remaining districts will have no outside force coming to their rescue. For simplicity, I'm going to ignore the butterfly effect and assume that the various characters, Katniss, Prim, Peeta, Gale, and the other tributes, are still born and raised similarly to how they were in the main timeline. I assess that the events of the first book play out much the same way. The only major deviation that might occur would be the role of Haymitch. Haymitch, in the main timeline, was working with the rebels. However, I believe that the absence of these rebels plays little role in Haymitch's actions during the 74th Hunger Games, given how freaked out he was when Katniss pulled out those berries in an act of defiance. The real change occurs when the events of Catching Fire take place. I'm not talking about the uprisings or riots that occur. Those seem to occur even without knowledge of 13's survival, although an argument could be made that an underground rumor of 13's survival might have given the districts hope. With that said, I'm not sure if knowledge of 13's survival was widespread. Problem is that the mass starvation, Hunger Games, and Peacekeeper crackdowns are inherently bad. You don't need underground rebels to tell people that. Nor could endless propaganda convince people that their state in life was good and worth staying in. The riots occur without rebel backing. What changes is that Plutarch Heavensby might not become head game maker as he no longer had a cause to fight for. As a result, the third quarter quell is vastly different from what we got in the main timeline. I am subscribing to the theory that Plutarch hijacked it. As for what the quarter quell would be,
We don't know.
but I did do a video on possible quarter quells and some of the comments offered suggestions that I didn't even think of. If you have time, you should go check that out. This means that Katniss is not drawn into the Hunger Games a second time, nor does she meet Bonnie and Twill outside of 12. As a result, the Capitol is able to maintain its control over the districts. With that said, another form of rebellion observed in the series is the refusal to work. As Snow himself observed, the Capitol is dependent on the district's labor and goods, and if riots and strikes go on long enough, then you'll start to see dissent amongst the Capitol citizens. This is especially true if tributes slowly become more bold and challenging the games themselves. Could you imagine the uproar if a tribute asks Caesar Flickerman if he would be willing to volunteer? The next thing that would happen is the resolve of the Peacekeepers. A lot of Peacekeepers come from District 2, and they have a sense of loyalty to the Capitol due to the Capitol offering 2 some of the resources it collects. If the Capitol itself is not receiving resources, then 2 won't either. You might see some Peacekeepers silently rebelling against the Capitol, until it reaches a point where the Capitol's only support is fear-based. All it would take to bring the system down is another spark. Ultimately, this longer rebellion would be less intense and last decades longer. The Capitol will fall, but it will fall much later than it originally did, and it might happen under another president unless Snow manages to last for another few decades. Ultimately, it would take 2 sparks, one to ignite the strikes and riots in the districts, and a second, decades later, to ignite infighting in the Capitol itself, as we would be witnessing peacekeepers fighting peacekeepers. But at this point, the defenders of the Capitol will not hold out for long, and the rebels would ultimately triumph. This will lead to a power vacuum, as there is no clear leader to take on the role. No President coin to easily swoop in. Either Panem will become an anarchical state like Libya, or enough leaders will be able to get together and form some sort of government to replace the Capitol. What do you all think? Without District 13, would the Capitol have held on to power indefinitely? Or would there have been a way through which its downfall might occur? Which pathway do you think is the most likely to occur? By order of President Snow, leave your thoughts in the comments section down below, and subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss another upload, such as the Clone Wars Infinity War mashup currently in development.